So today we're going to do a carburetor rebuild. This Quadrajet carburetor is off of a 69 GMC half-ton, I believe, 350, obviously a 4-barrel. I see that the fuel pipe's been modified. Obviously this must be a rubber hose going on there. I also see that the automatic choke has been modified. Now what I did notice here is that the secondaries don't work. Quadrajets have mechanical secondaries, and these ones don't work because that lockout doesn't release. That's supposed to come off when the choke is off, and the choke is off now. As you can see, it's wide open. So this thing has never had any secondaries. Here, I'll set this up so you can see what I'm talking about. So you see this little lever here. That is supposed to click over like so when the choke is fully off. Now this choke has been modified. It is fully off. Oh, I guess it wasn't. Now the secondaries still don't open. Secondaries are not opening. So we'll have to figure out why that is, why these secondaries don't work. Somebody may have bent the linkage or something. That's good. The primaries are going wide open, but the secondaries don't work. Well, we'll figure that out. I'll take you along as we go, and I might fast forward this video. Well, I was about to say you're going to need a small nail to knock this pin out, and then I see the accelerator lever is actually off. Like there's something wrong here. There's a piece missing off this carburetor. This lever should be like so. There should be a piece that's broken off the carburetor. Top of the carburetor is broken here because there's nothing to keep this rod from coming off. I don't know if I'll be able to modify that link. I suppose I could. Well, we'll worry about that. You want to take note that it was in the inside hole, but who knows, it's probably been apart so many times. And this lever can stay here. It does come out in one particular position, the accelerator pump rod, there it is there. It does come out. We'll take this rod out. And we'll take the link off the choke, close the choke. Take this, I see this is loose and bent. And this lever comes off. Now believe it or not, this comes out of here if you wiggle it just the right way. It used to anyways. And there are two screws down inside here, tapered screws. Actually, those are smaller. Must be T15. Alright, put all those screws. There's a couple different lengths, but they're pretty obvious. The long ones go in the back and the rest of them are all the same. Now, there's a secondary rod here for the choke pull-off, for the secondary air flap. Might as well take that off right now, seeing as how I got the right size fitting. We'll have to check to make sure that this is okay. It looks like it's been replaced. As I said, they've modified this. That should be it. The top part of the carburetor should come off now. The gasket is going to be in the kit, so we don't need that. You want to leave the paper gasket down. And take note of where this link comes from. There we go. Ooh, this looks pretty nasty inside. At least these tubes haven't fallen out. Clean that gasket off. Okay, we'll set that off to the side. Don't really need to disassemble that any further. Pull this gasket off of here. Oh, look at this. Holy mackerel. The power valve is bent. This is the power valve. Wow, this gasket's stuck on here. This is the accelerator pump. We get a new one of those in the kit. Main jets. There's a spring, and there may be a check ball in the base of that. No, this one won't have the check ball in it. Pull this off. Put that off to the side. There's a spring in here. Now this is the power valve height. Don't touch that. See this pin here on the side? That limits how far down into the jets the power valve will go when it's idling and there's vacuum pulling it closed. This is the float and the needle valve. Let's see, where's my screwdriver? Take the main jet out of here. Oops. Spring stuck on my screwdriver magnetically. Here's where the check ball is for the accelerator pump. It's underneath this screw down in here. And I'm going to see if I can take this. Yeah, it came out. Normally I have a wider screwdriver for this seat from the needle and seat. That we get new. So in case you're wondering, I mounted the carburetor in the vise with a couple of 5/16 bolts and nuts just to hold it so it makes it easier to work on. This spacer doesn't have to be removed, but I do have to take that check ball out of there. This one right in here. So I'm going to turn the carburetor upside down and that ball will fall out. I might as well take the fuel line off right now. Maybe this whole fuel line will turn. No. Okay, so we'll try and loosen the 5/8 nut here. Should have a flare. Oh, I can put a box end on it. That's kind of handy. I think we'll try and make up a new line for him. This fitting is kind of compromised. This is where the fuel filter lives. So inside here should be a fuel filter and a spring. So that will have to get new. That's a, believe it or not, a check valve, so it didn't siphon the fuel out of the tank if it rolled over. And there's a sealing washer right on here. We have to get that off because we're going to have to put the new one on that after. And there's a spring in here. The spring keeps the filter up against the nut inside there, and if the filter gets clogged, then the fuel pressure just simply pushes the filter off to the side. Let's pull this apart and see if this filter is plugged. Yeah, it's pretty plugged. But we're going to get a new one of those anyways. Alright, so I'm going to unbolt the carburetor from the bench here so I can turn it upside down. Drop the nuts on the floor. So this kind of looks Mickey Mouse. We'll see what's inside. Some of these were riveted in later days. Like I said, this is self-tapping screws in there. Somebody has taken off the automatic choke and put this manual choke conversion. Oh well. Looks like I need a Phillips screwdriver. Do I need to take that link off? I think so. I don't think I need to take that off. No, we can leave this assembled. There's a little seal that goes in here. Yeah, this can stay assembled because initially this one doesn't have vacuum on it, but if it did, there would be a vacuum or a seal inside on this shaft. Don't have to take this off. Here's that choke lockout. We'll probably remove that because the other choke linkage is missing, so there's no point. So now we can turn the carburetor upside down to remove the bottom part of the carburetor. Oh, that was the choke lever. So because I pulled the choke assembly off, this housing comes off. This little lever here is what applies the choke rod that goes up to the top, and of course this link was inside here, falls down, and it fell out. And I just dropped a bunch of tools on the floor. Okay, so now we'll turn this over again, being conscious that that check ball might fall out of there. And reposition this. So now we can take the screws out of the base. This has only got 3. These are different from the top screws. They're a little shorter, so be conscious of that. I see that the idle mixture is broken open. This carburetor must be off something newer than a 69, because in 69 they had conventional idle mixture screws. Okay. So my understanding of the problem with this carburetor is that if he leaves the truck sitting for several days, all the gas drains out of the carburetor. So what happens on a lot of times is this area of the carburetor is in the well of the carburetor, and these tend to leak or seep, so then the fuel just puddles inside here. Mind you, if it puddles inside there, it really can't go anywhere. Well, we're going to seal those up with some DevCon. This carburetor is definitely in need of some repairs here. Well, this gasket's stuck on here. Always save all the old gaskets as best as possible so we can compare them to the new ones, make sure there's no missing holes or extra holes. Clean off the excess gasket material. Actually, this is the area where it might be leaking, right in here. These had a tendency to seep, and of course that would go right into the intake manifold. If these leaked, it would be contained inside here, which is sealed all the way around. So it's this area here. So once we're done cleaning this, carefully scrape off the gasket. Actually, some of this gasket will just come off in the carb cleaner. That's something that's hard to find now, is carburetor cleaner, immersion cleaner. That stuff used to be readily available in a 5-gallon pail, and I think I got the last pail in Canada a few weeks ago. I'll show you what that is a little later on. But just clean the excess gasket off with a very sharp scraper. There are little ribs on here, so you have to be careful not to cut them off or nick them. Yeah, I'm going to try removing the jets. These are the jets down inside here. Try removing them. Nope, I'm going to have to get a bigger screwdriver. So let's see with a little bit more of a aggressive screwdriver here if I can get these jets out. There's one. There we go. Curious as to what size these are. That check ball still didn't fall out. So there is a number, believe it or not, on top of this. Have to get a magnifying glass, clean it off. Those look like about 60 thou, 55, 60 thou. There's some residue in the bottom of the carburetor. Well, I think that's going to be good enough. I'm hoping that check ball will come out. That check ball is way down inside here. Right down inside here. That's the accelerator pump discharge check ball. Some of this gasket material will come off in the cleaner. Anyways, that can go into the carb cleaner just like that. And this can go in the same way. Let's see about these secondaries here. See, they're not working. Well, there's nothing stopping these secondaries from working, but you can see they don't work. Something's awry here. Something's not right. Spring broken. Yes, there is a spring out of place. This spring is out of place. How the hell did that get out of place? You can see the secondaries on these Quadrajets are mechanical and it's not opening. Should do that. Something's out of place on this side. There's a return spring on here. If I put pressure on that spring, I wonder if that spring is busted. Don't normally have to take this apart. Something's not right. So this is what I'm talking about. This spring should be up against something. It's doing nothing. This spring here, this is what moves it. I wonder if it's supposed to be hooked onto that. To try and figure this out. So I'm pretty sure that that spring was supposed to be hooked under that ear. As you can see now, the first 1/3 to half throttle, only the primaries work, but then after that the secondaries come on full. So yeah, that's definitely supposed to be underneath there, and it was out of place. I don't know how that got off, but he's been driving this thing with no 4-barrel, it's just a 2-barrel. Good on fuel, but not so good for horsepower. That's the way it's supposed to be. Fuel economy, to hell with the fuel economy. Well, we'll clean up a bunch of these parts and put them in the immersion cleaner. So to remove the idle mixture screws, you need a special tool. It's kind of like a D-shaped socket. I used to have a homemade one, but this is actually a proper one. So I'm going to count the number of turns that the screws are at, just so I know. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 turns. Normally they're about 2.5 turns, so somebody's likely richened this up to compensate for other issues. So I'm taking them out now so that the cleaner will get into the idle mixture passages. There's the idle mixture screws and spring on them. This one's contained. Will that fall through my screen? No. Let's take this one out too. And a little rusty. Again, there's the factory tool for doing carb adjustments. It's got a little pointer on it so you can tell how far you turned it. It's an OTC part number. I can't read the part number. Well, I'll put it on there, maybe you'll be able to see it. So the stuff that's in this box here, obviously the float. Can't put this power valve in the carb cleaner because there's a little nylon seal on the top that'll get damaged. The small little screws, accelerator pump we're going to get new, needle and seat we get new. We can't put that in the carb cleaner because it's got a diaphragm in it. But everything else should go in this basket. So this is what I'm using as carb cleaner, heavy duty parts cleaner, and I'm surprised that it actually came with a basket. I just opened this, haven't used it yet, so we're going to use this little basket. There's a little hook on the side so you can drain it. So I've got it sleeping with the fishes, so to speak. We'll let it sit in there for a couple of hours. This parts cleaner is definitely not as caustic as the old stuff I had that you can't buy anymore. It ate itself through the can, that's probably why. So it'd probably have to stay in there a little longer to get a thorough cleaning, but that's okay. I'm going for supper now. Well, there's all the parts removed from the cleaner. It was in there for about 12 hours. Definitely not as caustic as the old stuff we used to use years ago. Doesn't have that distinctive odor that would kick everybody out of the shop, but it definitely cleaned the parts quite well. I see that check ball fell out of this passage inside here. Anyways, I'm going to blow everything off and see how good it comes with compressed air. So there's all the carburetor parts blown out, clean. They came out pretty good. This is the bowl that we're concerned about potentially leaking in this area here, so I think I'm going to pour some fuel in it and see if it seeps out. I'm going to put the base gasket on, or maybe not. Maybe I don't need that. I think that's a vacuum passage right there. Anyways, everything come pretty clean. And again, got the carburetor kit here. The carburetor number on these Quadrajets was on the one side of the carburetor right there, 1708-2227, and this is the carburetor kit that I've gotten from the parts guys, high-grade carburetor repair kit. Comes with instructions on how to reassemble it. Definitely need the float adjustment and a couple of other adjustments. Okay, so we'll start putting this back together again. So as I mentioned before, this carburetor would lose the fuel out of it after sitting for a while, so I'm suspicious that it might be leaking in this area. So I put the jets back in, although it doesn't matter. I'm going to pour some gasoline in the float bowl and see if it leaks through. Shit, I spilled it now. I'll let that sit for a few minutes and see if it seeps through. I should put a piece of paper underneath it. That would be a good way to spot it. Just going to get a small piece of paper. Won't see it on the rag here, but I'll see it on the paper if it leaks into the paper. So we'll let that sit for a little while and see if there's any signs of it leaking. Put a little bit more, I think. That should be about right. So we'll let that sit for a while. So that's been sitting for about 20 minutes, and there's no evidence of a fuel leak that I can see. No signs of fuel seeping through. I'm going to let it sit for about an hour. So after about an hour of sitting, there was absolutely no evidence of fuel seeping around these plugs. So I can't explain why the carburetor would seem to lose its prime unless it's evaporating out the top of the float bowl, which is probable if the engine is really hot when it's shut down. But so we're going to reassemble this. The first thing to do is to put the base back on. So this should be the proper gasket. Looks correct. Maybe not. It helps if you put it the right way. Yeah, that looks correct. Like I said, I'm going to compare it to the original gasket just to make sure that there's no missing holes and no extra holes. And that looks right. So we'll set that one off to the side. And this simply goes right on top like so. And there are 3 medium length screws. There's 1, there's 2, and where's the third one? Here it is. 1, 2, 3. Got a brand new nut driver here and I'm not using it. Okay, so now we can mount the carburetor back on my makeshift stand here and reassemble everything in the float bowl. So I've already installed the main jets. So the next thing we're going to put in is the accelerator pump discharge check ball. It's a little ball, and it goes down into this hole right here. There, it drops right in, and then there's a special screw. There's the screw. There is the screw. Did I not put it in the cleaner? Should be in here. Choke housing. There it is. So this little screw goes on top. Just drop it in there. And might need to use a magnet. Now, we got her. There's no spring under that screw. Now, I don't think this kit comes with any springs. No, it does not. So we need to reuse this spring. Make sure it's clean. This spring goes inside here under the accelerator pump. And next is the needle and seat. So here is the needle and seat right here. Open the package. There's a little gasket that goes on the needle and seat. So make sure the gasket's in place and then drop this in here. Now you need a wide standard screwdriver to put this in. Believe it or not, there was a special tool for this. But a wide blade screwdriver about, let's see if I can find something wider. So I managed to tighten it with this little tool here. But a wide bladed screwdriver has to be about almost ½ an inch wide, but not too fat. Next we'll put the needle valve spring. I gotta take these gloves off, they're just too bulky, at least one anyways. There's a little clip for the needle valve that must go on without losing it, of course. So that goes on like so. And the float. In hindsight, I probably should have ordered a new float for this, but I think we'll be okay. Wipe it off. And then there's this piece here that goes through, and the float hooks over the top like so, and you simply drop it into the carburetor. Put this little lever pivot, oops, it fell off. Try this again. I need another coffee or a drink or something. Come on. There we go. Okay. Alright, what's next? Let's put the choke lever and the choke housing on the side. So on the choke shaft that goes through the side of the carburetor is a little O-ring seal that has to go in place here on the side of the carb. With the lip facing out. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. The lip facing out. And then this has got to go back in. We're going to put that secondary lockout lever on the side of the carburetor here. Again, this is how this secondary lockout lever goes on. So that prevents the secondaries from working if the choke is on. And then this housing is going to go in like so. And like so. But as we put the housing in, we have to put this little link on. Where's the little link? This little link goes down inside here, so we have to install that link, and I'm going to get a magnet to do that. So hold it like about like that, drop it down in there, maybe hold it straight up and down, and pull the housing out so that you can slide the link in between. It's magnetic, so it ends up sticking to the side. Oh, I missed. Missed again. Somewhere's around there. Let's get the lever in the right spot. You'll know once it's in the right place. It'll go in place. There we go. Okay, I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. So there you can see that little lever down inside there. When I put the choke on, it pulls the lever down. That's on in that direction. You can also see the secondary lockout. If the choke is on, this little link is pushed towards the secondary lockout, prevents it from working. So according to the carburetor number, this carburetor is off of 78305. So I've got this spec sheet here, and this is the float level, 15-30 seconds, and so on. Okay, so now we're going to adjust the float level. So the spec for this carburetor is 15-30 seconds, and you have to touch it onto the float, and it has to be level with the bottom of the carburetor, or top of the carburetor. So push down gently on the needle valve, and let's put this over here so we can see where we're at. 12, 14, so that's roughly 13-30 seconds. So to adjust it, we bend the float down just slightly. Again, lay this across. And there we go. There's 14-30 seconds. That 1/32 of an inch isn't going to make any difference. So that's the float adjustment. The next thing to do is to put the power valve spring in. Power valve spring, where is it? I did not put it in the cleaner because I didn't want to lose it. So this is the power valve spring. I'm going to gently stretch it a little bit to make it just a tad bit more aggressive. And we're going to get some silicone spray. So if you remember from the earlier portion of this video, I did not put this in the cleaner because there's this little nylon ring and I was afraid it might get damaged. So I'm going to clean the outside circumference of this piston with some emery cloth, just so that it's got no residue on it. And I'm going to put some silicone spray, not grease, but even penetrating fluid would work. Just something to act as a lubricant. Now this was bent, and I've straightened both of these so that they're now straight. These go into the jets. So I'm going to give a little spray here, a little spritz. Oh, maybe I have to put the base gasket on first. Go look at this gasket. Yes, I have to put this gasket on first. So I'll just make sure that there's nothing else that needs to go in here. Oh yes, there is. This baffle sits in here like so. That's just a baffle to stop the fuel pump pressure from actually... Okay, so that's going to go down in there like so, and of course the spring, but we got to put the gasket on. Looks like this gasket will go on afterwards because it is split here. We've got some lube on here. Yeah, I'm going to have to put this in after. Yep. Oh boy. Let's try this again. Some of them you had to put the power valve in after the gasket was on. You have to make sure that these needle valves go into the jets. just like so, and we'll use a small screwdriver to push this seal in. This is like a little Teflon retainer. The carburetor top will hold that in once it's in place. So when engine is running, engine vacuum pulls down on that and restricts the needle valves into the seats. Answer the phone. So flip the gasket underneath. This is pretty stiff, this gasket. Underneath the power valves. There we go. Again, make sure. Now remember that adjustment. I don't know if anybody's tampered with it, but there's actually a plug in the top of this carburetor right here. We could remove that plug and this power valve height can be adjusted on the vehicle. So I might remove that plug. So that lever's in place. There's nothing else that goes inside the carburetor except the accelerator pump. We got to put the accelerator pump in, but we can still do that. So we have to reuse this spring on the carburetor accelerator pump. This comes off. We don't get the spring with it. I got to get a little small screwdriver here. Okay, so you don't get this cap nor this spring with the accelerator pump, so we got to make sure. Here's the accelerator pump. And of course this cap goes back on once we compress this spring. Just like so. Put a little silicone spray on this as well. And hopefully we can get this back in here. Through the carburetor top. That's good. Now that's just going to push up on that gasket until we get ready to put the carburetor top on. So I'm just going to do a once over and have a look around here, see if I've missed anything. So put a little Teflon lube on the secondary air valve. Now there is a little wind-up spring in here that there is theoretically an adjustment for, but we didn't tamper with it, so we're going to leave that alone. And this is ready to go back on. Get those secondary air valve rods in place, just like so. That's it. Now we're ready to put this back together. Now somebody cut this off, I don't know why, to get that accelerator pump. So we're going to have to try to modify this little rod here, this little pivot, so that the accelerator pump lever doesn't come off. Just remains to put all the screws in. And then there's two tapered screws that go in through here. I think these are T15, no, T20, the other ones are T25s. Next we've got the choke link, this little link here. So you have to put this link in and then turn it 90 degrees. So with the choke lever all the way up, you can actually get this link in. There's enough play in the linkage. There it is right there. And then the pivot lever goes on. Now this looks like it's bent. Yes, it is bent. The pair of pliers. This is supposed to be straight, but it's bent. So somebody's bent this. We're going to straighten it out. So I managed to straighten that out. This goes on just like so, and then hooks on to the lever like that. And then we use a standard screwdriver to put that in. That is bent, or something is wrong here, because now it's seized. Something's wrong here. Doesn't go that way. Now I know why that lever was bent. This rod bent? I have to figure this out. So I had the lever in the wrong way. Goes in from the back side, not from the front side. Or not from this side. But I'm sure I took it out. But mind you, this little plate was bent, and that's probably why. There's the fast idle. Okay, so what's left now? Normally this accelerator rod would be straightforward. There's a little eye that hooks into the lever here in just the right spot, just like so. And this either goes on the inside or outside. If you put it on the inside hole, you're going to get increased accelerator pump travel. Now normally, like I said, normally there would be, that pin would be, that's accelerator pump. You can actually hear it. So we're going to have to modify this so that we're going to have to put a machine screw or something in here so that this pin, otherwise this is just going to come off. Just going to work its way off. Just like that. Then we'd have no accelerator pump. So I'm going to figure out something. So I've decided I'm going to use this small machine screw, so I'm tapping the pinhole out so I can put in a machine screw. I may have to drill the pivot mount on the accelerator pump lever to accept this screw, and put a little spacer and washer on it. That should be good. So this is what I'm going to put in here for a screw, and I'm going to put a spacer in there and Loctite on it. Hopefully that'll work. So this is what I've done. I've drilled out the hole. I put a little bushing on the end of this screw so that it only tightens up so tight. I'm going to put that threaded in there with some Loctite, but I got to cut this off now, so I'm going to use a hidden feature on the wire stripper is to cut these screws. So this machine screw with this bushing is too long, so I'm going to use a hidden feature on these wire strippers to cut this 532 screw. Thread it in to the depth that you want, and then cut it. And now when you thread the screw back out, it straightens out the thread. So there's the accelerator pivot repaired. Should be just fine. Like I said, I put a little bushing in there, a little Teflon lube on that as well, just to, that should be just fine. I did put it on the inside spot. That's the inner hole, is the pivot for this particular carburetor. And we got a few more pieces to put on. Secondary air valve pull off, this guy here. So we'll get that all together and put the idle mixture screws in, put them at about 2.5 turns, and then I guess the carburetor is ready to give back to the customer. Oh, I'm waiting for a fuel filter too. Here's the fuel filter nut, and here is the gasket. You have to push it on very gently, just like so, otherwise it'll leak. No pieces left in here? No. Okay. So here's the new fuel filter. Fuel filter goes in like so, and then there's a spring, this little guy here, that goes in to hold the fuel filter up against the line nut, and then this is threaded in, and it's a 1-inch nut. Just like so. So I got no pieces left over. There was a number of plugs on this carburetor. I'm not sure which ones go where, but various vacuum sources. And there's a piece of vacuum line to this choke vacuum brake. Let's see, the vacuum brake should open it up. Yeah, that's about right. There is an actual specification for either the number of degrees that the choke opens or a few thousandths of an inch. So there's the carb all back together, ready to go on. I'm not sure where these nipples go, but he'll have to determine that. I made up a new inlet pipe, put a partial flare on it so the hose doesn't come off. Hopefully that's adequate. Secondaries are going to work now as long as the choke's not on. As you can see, the secondaries work now. So we'll call that a wrap. Hopefully he has no problem getting this thing up and running.